How about the
I've
California?
been
Does this
for
work?
12 years. I didn't remember.
Switch off?
Sounds like it.
But I like it.
Oh, good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the San Juan Bautista Planning Commission. Tonight is March 4th, and this is one of our regular meetings. Would you stand with me, please? Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can we have the roll call, please?
Ernest Franco.
Here.
David Medeiros.
Here.
Betty Caber.
Here.
Georgiana Galarte.
Here.
Pat Garrett.
There.
Thank you.
We have a quorum. We can continue. We have an agenda. Is there any comments to the agendas that we want to pull, relocate? No comments on the agenda. We'll accept it as approved, as presented. Public comment. At this time, anyone in the audience who would like to speak on an issue that is not already on the agenda, now would be the time. If it is on the agenda, please wait until that part occurs, and then you can have your comments as a package with the rest of the stuff that's on that item. Sir.
Yes, sir.
Would you come to the podium, please? Your name for the record?
Okay.
And your name for the...
It's improv today. My name is Don Gonzalez. And, I'm just kind of flying out to see my pets, which is usually what I do. But I'm from Hollister. I have a business there at the Bear Flag Gallery, selling succulents. Just started a couple days ago. I was born and raised in Hollister. I love this area. I just recently found out that San Juan Bautista was first historically as far as the city progression, and that was interesting. I've always thought of Hollister being the center of this little universe, but it's not true. So I'm kind of back in a way. You know, it's the Hollister's in my soul. You know, the apricots, walnuts, dirt, people, all that, and just a slow pace of life. You know, but my idea is if you have a Jeep, so to speak, and you're in the mud, and you want to get out, you have to hitch yourself to something outside of yourself to get yourself out of where you're at. And I've talked to some folks of the San Juan Bakery, and they've been talking about how the economy here is really kind of sagging, and that bothers me. You know, I want to help with that context. So I really just have the idea of working with Carmel, which is a fellow, Junipero Cerro. When he came over here, he started in Carmel. He went to San Juan. Well, we need to reverse the process. Go back to Carmel and say, hey guys, we need some. You guys are solid economically. Let's do some farmers markets and European style farmer markets or whatnot, and try to do a mission sister city kind of a cohabitation, I guess you'd say. I don't know, I lack the vocabulary there, but just a symbiotic relationship between these two cities to really allow there to be further economic development, and to allow maybe a biking, have a biker, 10 speeds or whatever you call it, just like I don't know, a race or whatever between the two sister cities, But to really start that conversation between us and Carmel and really get the art kind of refired up here and just have a relationship with where we started, which is 80 miles over to the coast. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
He's right, Mr. Chairman. When we had a revival in the 1960s here in San Juan Bautista, we had people from Carmel come and start businesses here. Catamatories came, the Leshbas came, and there was a better exchange among us and other tourist-oriented cities.
Interesting. Okay. Any other comments? There being none, we'll go to the consent agenda. No, informal project review. At this point, if anybody had a project they would like to bring before the city, but prior to going with a formal application and going before the Planning Commission for public hearings, this commission allows you to come in and make an informal presentation, get informal comments that you can use to read into your project, and hopefully with the feedback you get, the project that you propose formally will go through a lot faster. We call that the informal review project review. Is there anyone interested in that?
There has been no application for an informal submission.
Okay. None. We'll go to the next item, the consent agenda. We have the posting of the agenda and also approval of minutes of the meeting of January 23rd, 2014. It was a special meeting. Do I have any comments on the agenda, on the minutes or the posting of the agenda? Otherwise, I'll accept a motion to approve as a single unit.
Mr. Chairman, I have just a typo on page 3 of the January minutes on the
okay.
City of Carmel.
Page 3.
And,
City of Carmel.
and with,
Oh,
W-I-T-H,
you.
if we're talking about spelling typos.
Spell check thinks it knows what we're
With,
trying to say.
okay.
Thanks, I'll fix that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Good, bad, or indifferent? Is there a motion for action?
I'll make a motion that we approve both items.
Motion to approve, second?
I'll second it.
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, we have two action items. The first one being the housing element environmental actions. Okay, we're being asked to approve Resolution 2014-X, recommending that the City Council adopt a negative declaration for the draft 2009 to 2014 housing element, which is recently accepted by the state, subject to approval by the city. Staff.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, so in the packet was including an initial study and negative declaration. As you know, we had approved the housing element cycle 4, and that's going to City Council this month. Along with that, we had to be in compliance with CEQA, and so Roger and I have been working on an initial study, and from that study we identified that it would have a negative effect on the environment. So we had prepared a negative declaration. In your packet, going through the initial study and mandatory findings, we found that the proposed project could not have a significant effect on the environment, and a negative declaration will be prepared. Basically, as projects come forward with the housing element, those projects will be identified on a case-by-case basis with CEQA. And so at this point, we look to get this approved and move forward to get the both the housing element and the environmental approved by City Council March 18th. Once the city sends the housing element to the state, approved by the city, we'll be able to go for the community development block grant, which that's one of the requirements, is to have that approved by the city. So, if you have any questions, I can answer them.
I have a question or a comment. I don't know where it's appropriate to include it, but my first inclination was on environmental discussion. It refers to the dark skies ordinance. I'd like to add, every time we talk about new housing, I'd like us to include the concept of native California landscaping, because I'm thinking there aren't a lot of new homes in town, but the one on the corner of Monterey and 3rd has a new lawn, which I just don't think we can do that anymore. And I don't want to mandate it, but I'd like us to suggest that people consider native California.
Particularly with the drought.
Yeah, and it's going to, we may have rain this year, but I think we need to consider that we We live in a Mediterranean climate. We're not going to get a lot of water.
And I think our tree and plant list encourages drought-resistant plants and stuff like that, so I think it's appropriate. Maybe we should really come up with a positive policy that would reinforce that.
Yeah, and that's interesting actually that you mentioned that, because I had received a phone call about someone in the community that was concerned about just that.
Yeah.
And so when I kind of did a little bit of research and got back to them, basically I said we don't have any mandatory landscaping, and people can kind of, I mean, they're going to be paying for the water, and that we want to promote these drought resistant and species that don't require a lot of water. And so
I think what Amanda has brought a good point is that in the approval process where we issue building permits, we have that ability to impose that condition. We do that systematically, but I know we do it on commercial. And we can do the same thing as a policy statement for residential.
I'd like to look at the shrubs and tree list that we have again, because it must be 15 or so years old. And I've been observing how the windmill plants have grown and are beautifully taken care of, and they don't look like they ever get any water. And so that might be some of the plants we ought to include in our list if we don't have them there already.
Well, that's appropriate because the landscaping plan for the brewery is submitted, and then I take it back for further consideration, and then they'll bring it back to us.
Good.
And that'll bring that list, and that will be the appropriate time where we can get into a dialogue on and specify the plants that we feel are appropriate.
Yeah, good.
Mr. Chairman, as I went through this initial study packet, and good Lord knows we've been through it before, but it really comes home to me that every house, every project has a specific role that we must play in order to review it. And I would encourage anybody who doesn't understand in the community what an initial study is to get a copy and study it, because that's what we need to evaluate things on as a commissioner.
There's a lot of stuff online with the, the Office of Governor's Office of Planning and Research and the American Planning Association. Both would have information on how to use these documents or explain the documents themselves. So that would be two places people could go looking.
Did we really start this in February of 2013?
the initial study.
The actual date when you so we've been at it for a whole year, and you've made a really
It's
good
probably an oversight on our
progress.
part that if we had known this, we would have brought it to you earlier. But we discovered the time frame and getting it noticed and the hearing, and we couldn't get it to you. So it says, well, let's defer it to the city council. They will meet on the 18th, and then they can conduct the hearing, public review period for it and adopt it. So,
During the city council meeting.
yeah. And the only reason that we're accelerating that path is that the April the 11th is the deadline for submittal of the CBG block grant application, and it has to be on board. And so we're juggling these
So good.
mandatory review periods as well as the application.
I'm assuming that in the future it will not take us forever to do a housing element again, ever.
Well, actually, we'll be the first kids in the class to have it turned in, since we're doing that with
Yes,
the general
it's
plan.
just,
So we'll be
been
at the
dragging.
top of the list getting it.
Be good for 4 or 5 years if you
Yeah.
want to see it again.
And actually, they changed it to 8-year cycles now, so we'll have
nice.
a larger window, which is better for a smaller community like San Juan.
This has just been pathetic drag on our whole financial picture. So thank you, Matthew, for finishing it.
Okay, any other comments? Is there any comments from the public on the proposed initial study and proposed negative declaration? There being no comments, then I will ask the Commissioner, do you have any final comments before we ask for action? Okay. I'll ask for a motion for action on Resolution 2014-XX.
was the number?
I didn't look.
Oh,
It came in.
yeah.
Double X.
It's
Double X.
3 or 4, I think, right in there. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We just know that it's the next one in line. The two X's are holding the number.
We'll need to change on the bottom of the page, passed and adopted this 4th day of, we need to change it to March.
March.
Ooh, that's right.
Yep.
That's right. February and March look the same this year.
Does the resolution have to have the support sentence for each of those last two?
I'd have to defer to staff on that.
The chief saying is the support on conducting
Is that,
environmental
is
analysis.
that typically in a resolution, the support?
I'd kind of use the template, and this is the structure, and it seemed like it was a good way of
I
Framing
do-
it, yeah. Mhm.
I do question the understandability of the first support for that begins upon conducting an environmental analysis and so forth. It just seems like it's difficult to understand.
Which one's that? Virginia?
It's
The
just
first one?
It's
Third paragraph in the bottom.
the support for the first, now therefore be it resolved.
Upon conducting an environmental analysis of the project, staff has determined that given the scope of the project and the estimation, adoption of the proposed draft 2009-14 housing element, policies and programs would not result in a significant impact to the environment, and a negative declaration has been prepared.
Probably take out the word determined,
Yes.
because the commission is the one that makes the determination. Staff does the work.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you take
So
out,
what are you gonna put in
staff
there?
has determined that. So upon
Take out-
conducting an environmental analysis of the project, given the scope of the project and the estimation, adoption of the proposed draft, etc.
Just rewording that to make it a little easier.
Take out staff has determined that in the scope of the project.
Yeah, that whole, between the commas can be removed. Adoption of the draft housing element policies will not result in a significant impact.
That's even better.
Mhm. Just
Yeah.
take out staff has,
Because the whole thing is, if we don't want to get challenged, well, did staff do this and you guys didn't read it, or we can work with it? This way is very clear, because we
you
did look,
understand, is
did
it
read these
upon
things.
conducting an environmental analysis of the project, the scope of the project, and the estimation adoption of the proposed.
The same with the third whereas then. Okay.
Thank you.
And the other one? What about the other ones? You have problems with that?
Which one?
The other support based on the project definition?
That's,
It's kind of like redundant, but we have to give something to say about the California Department of Fish and Game,
yes.
then it has to be in there.
It has to be separate from the
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
remarks. Interesting.
See, this way we got one resolution that takes everything in there. Okay. Subject to those changes. Motion for action?
Do we take a roll call vote? Trish? Because,
Sheets. I was reading that new rule that said the legislative body, so I
Oh,
wasn't sure if it applied to
okay.
planning commission.
That's fine, I know at the city council level, when they adopt resolutions and ordinance, they have to take a roll call.
Oh, that's new.
Yeah, it's a new requirement.
Okay. So,
So the planning commission hereby recommends? Is that what we're saying here?
right. We're
Can the
not
city
gonna be-
council approve for negative declaration based on the following findings? So that's the motion to approve?
Yeah, subject to. because we're not the final action on this.
No, I know that, but we're just recommending.
Yeah.
So.
So we do staff
wants-
does the work, we do the work, and then we say, hey, guys, this
Yeah.
document
Right.
shows that your adoption of the housing home is clean.
Okay, so I make a motion that we approve for recommendation to Plan Commission, the City of San Juan Bautista to adopt a negative declaration for the draft, using the draft here, 2009-214 of the housing element.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, that's
With-
going to help us get some money from the Community Development Block Grant Program.
And with the updates that we recommended today, the changes today.
Yes.
Okay, so that one's through. Now, we have a sign code. We have a continued public hearing. The sign code we started some time ago, and we've had some drafts, and we've had some city attorney recommendations or requirements, whatever. And so now we're back to another one, another draft. And so I'd like staff to bring us up to date on that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and members of the commission, this was brought to our attention with the appeal because our city attorney was making sure that all of our wordings were proper in the thing, and then he discovered in the sign ordinance that he wants to make sure that he brings that up to the legal form so that it's consistent with the thing. However, he also pointed out, because I was showing him, I says that we were going to include graphics in the ordinance, that ultimately will be adopted, and he recommended that internally in the sign ordinance that we specify and make reference to the design guidelines and that the graphics should be a part of Section 7 of the design guidelines, and that's for signs. And then that way there, the ordinance itself will not have graphics. You'll make reference to it and Now, with that said, the last time the design guidelines were reviewed and approved was back in 2004. And I think the consensus that Matt Nyer said is maybe when we do the graphics on this, is let's frame this and go through this and then maybe update it. Because this is the appropriate time where we are including new graphics into it and taking some out, and then take a quick look at the whole thing and then bring it up to speed for what we feel is appropriate, and then we can adopt that by resolution.
One thing to keep in mind is when we first started the sign code, one of the first things I pushed was getting policy out of the ordinance. Ordinance is a law, policy is a suggestion. So we have stated that projecting signs have to be 7 foot 6 inches above the sidewalk, so tall people don't get hit. On page 7-4 of your guidelines, consistent with the zoning ordinance, at least a 7-foot pedestrian clearance shall be maintained from sidewalk level. So we have, that's okay as a policy, which we probably would change, but that would have been in conflict with an ordinance that says you will be 7'6", as opposed to at least 7, which means 6'5", 6'6", 6'7". So
I think it goes on further to say between 7 and 8 feet in the same guidelines.
Oh, that's for signs.
Yeah.
That's standing signs, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's I say policies are great, but I think we have to, once we adopt the ordinance, we have to go back and, like this, Roger said, clean this thing up so that it's consistent. Because if we're going to say, go back and look at height above the sidewalk, I don't want the guy going from an ordinance that says 7'6" to all 7's okay. That's not too.
Now, with that, is if any of the commissioners don't have the latest, let us know, and then we'll have it duplicated so that when we do start to review this, everybody's on the same page. Because,
So we
I
will
believe everybody has a copy of it, but if you don't, let me know and we'll get one to you.
Vanda and I were thinking, that this is not exactly this point, but since you bring up the document, that we would like to make more display of those documents in public places.
Yes, exactly.
Even though they're just drafts, they wouldn't be handling them, but just to make them aware of what to look for.
Yeah, and with the graphics that I included as discussion items, and we wanted to discuss that tonight, is that I pointed out to Ernie today when we kind of went through the agenda, is that monument signs that are going to occur, in our roundabouts and in our entrance. We've never really discussed this, and these are just some graphic that I just put together, but I think we should adopt something that would give us a guideline so that we can have monument and interest signs to the city. And there's 4 ways to come into the city. And we were thinking about putting roundabouts at those 4 intersections that come into the city, and inside those roundabouts are going to have a circular area that could be landscaped with a monument sign that would really identify San Juan as a city of history. And then too is with some of the graphics that I pointed out to you, I had included a directional sign that has been kind of floating around, and it's just power of thought for you to consider is that, and I kind of followed with what we did for the Union Bank, where when you have a arched little area as it comes in and stuff like that, and you can come in and you can see where is the library, where's the museum, where's the state park, where's the mission, where's the historical downtown. And these could be scattered throughout the community so that when people, and I've been into communities like that where they show you where everything's at.
That's good. I need it.
There has to be a there when you get there. And this will help focus and create that space that is there, there being San Juan Bautista. So I do like that.
So when will we review the Chapter 7 of the design guidelines?
We can have a special meeting, or we can bring it back at their next meeting, or I think it's really imperative that we make them consistent with what we've been working for the last couple of years on, and go right through it.
The way we did before? A special meeting on a certain Monday or Thursday or whatever,
It shouldn't,
as a committee of the whole?
it shouldn't take that long, because basically that document is pretty good. All we're talking about is for the signs, that whatever we say in that ordinance is not contradicted here. So you don't want to have one of those kind of problems again.
For instance, there's a heading for discouraged signs, whereas in the sign ordinance we're prohibiting them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, see, policy and ordinance is 2 different things.
And then too is that I'd like you to, like I had a wall sign perpendicular, and 12 inches, and open. And I want you to kind of look at that. And then there was a flag sign, that with the mission, there that could be hanging off of an outrigger, that, and it would be portable where they could take it off when they come in. And then the next one was just an open sign. And then I even included Chris Materano's one that he sold as a pedestal sign.
Yep. So from this day forward, what are we going to do? What's next?
And I think Ernie pointed out a good point to us this morning. I included the open American flag as a sign of open. I know some merchants put the American flag out. We really don't want to specify or regulate the American flag. I think it would be a dishonor to a lot of veterans, and so we might just want to...
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the flag of the United States of America is not a sign, it's not a banner, it's the flag of the United States of America. And if we have to say it's exempt, we shouldn't have to say it's exempt. It should just not be. It's not a sign, it's not a banner, it's the flag, the flag. So, yeah, I think we're on the right track.
And then too, is I think Vanda brought me this, and this was a prime example of how
That
we
is
can
nice.
do something at the entrance of town that, this was just a nice wood sign,
And when we do something like this, is it at city expense?
Generally, yes. Yeah. We can sometimes solicit the Chamber of Commerce, can have it, because it's really advertising the city and stuff. But as a general rule of thumb, the city would spearhead those,
But the San Juan Committee did talk about in one of our meetings how to get people off the freeway. And that freeway is going to get bigger. It's going to get busier as soon as they close the gap. And so signs like this will be important to say there's a there over there. And the direction and what's available will hit them with enough time to get off the highway and come into town. So I think we got to start thinking about that because we're talking about high speed and lots of traffic.
Roundabout?
And just as a follow-up is that, we've been working with the owner of the ARCO, and depending on how the appeal comes back, but he was committed to an informational center at the convenience store. And I've worked with him on 2 or 3 different alternates where it wasn't just going to be an outside chaos, but it would be more of where you could go in and it would have maybe even a glass container where we could have some artifacts in there, and an informational thing where it could show what's in the downtown so that when people are going in to pay their bill, they could go into this thing. The restroom's going to be very close to it, and then they can see, what's in town. So it'll be kind of a informational aspect to come in town.
Mr. Chairman, when we have this special committee, open meeting and so forth, can we take some time to talk about the fact that we have approached Caltrans, we've approached the state parks to put up bigger signs on the freeways coming in different directions, and I don't see that they've ever responded to us positively and put some more signs up for us.
Yeah. I was giving directions to somebody delivering something to us, and they were coming from the north. I said, well, take the 129 exit to San Juan, and I came that way, and I realized it doesn't say San Juan.
It does not.
Says,
Until you get on the off-ramp.
Yeah.
Then it tells you which way to go,
Yeah.
which is kind of dumb.
His GPS didn't show
Yeah.
my street, I guess.
So,
Excuse my expression.
So is that appropriate for us to discuss at that time along with design review?
Oh, yeah.
Approaching the entities who promised us help and haven't done it.
Yeah,
We're talking signs at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, Valerie Eglin and I worked with Caltrans, and we submitted a letter and encouraged them
that
go
was the original.
heading southbound on 101 by the Betaville. There is nothing to say San Juan until you get off the off-ramp, and then it'll say Watsonville and San Juan. And what we wanted to do is get one of those green signs to say Watsonville, San Juan Bautista. So at least they turn off and come in.
Well, I would think it would be San Juan first, being that we're closer.
Yeah.
And older.
We were making
And older.
pretty good progress when we had Eddie Garacha here as our park superintendent. But he transferred, and it is my understanding that they have appointed a superintendent for this park again, and it's not just an interim person. So maybe we'll be successful this time working with them to
Yeah.
get something out.
And we've
Maybe-
been working, and Matt and I met with Brandy Ryder, and she comes sometimes to our technical advisory meeting, and she has helped us and everything, but it just didn't matriculate and get resolved.
I think they're hoping to get the head of the state parks here for a
Yeah.
visit soon. That Rotary is working with them. Maybe we can make a presence there for a sign too.
Yeah, it'd be worth breakfast. Okay.
If I can add something as
Sure.
well, kind of with the last few months, the wayfinding kind of group that was identified, led by Brenda Weatherly.
The Hollister Downtown Association spearheaded it,
Yep. So basically, in the next month and a half, we'll have kind of a scope of work of what they're basically the consultant has identified for San Benito County, Hollister, and San Juan Bautista, since we've participated in that kind of study, basically. And so as far as signing people and getting people to San Juan Bautista, this is something that they're going to be looking at to kind of, because they have certain kinds of
And this consultant will be making some recommendations, that we can go through, and some of them might be appropriate and some of them might. But I think that the council participated in this, and we're paying our share with Hollister, the San Benito County, and the San Juan Bautista. So the consultant is going to come up with some recommendations, I think.
Yeah.
It'll be good
So
food for thought.
And they do have formulas where they kind of say, okay, you're 2 miles away from San Juan Bautista, and they kind of give you the idea of, okay, it's coming up, and then, as you get closer, they start to sign different things, and then, of course, the automobile signage is going to be larger due to different speeds and things like that, but then also they're going to have pedestrian signage for more downtowns and folks walking around, so that'll be coming up pretty soon. And
Now, do you feel that commission action would be premature at this point, considering the fact that you're going to be getting a report on recommended stuff?
I think at
Because
this
we could have a meeting and start talking about these things, whereas if we're paying a consultant, we should hear what he's got to say, and then we can modify.
I think that's what
As needed.
this first meeting is going to be talking about when they kind of have their scope of work and those ideas that just kind of those initial ideas, and I think that's where I'm kind of the person in the middle, so I'll relay, and then where needed, we could have them come down. But as of this point, I kind of gave them all the information about San Juan Bautista, so they have a sense of what we have in place, how we're or where we're going, and different things like that. So they do have that information to pull from to get a sense of what would fit in San Juan Bautista.
See what would fit in what we want.
Right.
Yeah. See, I don't want to have to. Well, the formula says this. Well, fine. This may not be what we want to do.
Right.
So.
Yeah, but and they're not going to be bringing forward exactly, the plan saying, okay, this sign's going to be right here and that specific, but that just kind of the scope of how
The signs to use, the best.
I'm not even sure the signs either. I think
It's just the consultant.
just what are we going to be signing? If we're in Hollister, we want to be directed to San Juan Bautista. If we're in San Juan Bautista, we want to be directed to Fremont's Peak or the Pinnacles or Hollister. So kind of a
But we don't know what they're going to propose, so.
yeah. So I'll be bringing it to you guys when that information comes out, but it's not more so going to be identifying this is where we're going to have this sign that tells us this way, this way, this way, this way, but more so, I guess it could be possible design, but that's information that I'm going to be figuring out and finding out when I go to those meetings.
You want to just hold up on doing anything at this point regarding those entryway signs?
Well, the nice part about it is that your sign ordinance still has integrity, and if we refer to the sign design guidelines, and if the Wayfinder group comes in and presents some alternates that you feel are there, we can adopt those graphics, and then we can modify the design guidelines, because that's a resolution, and that's an easy fix. It's not an ordinance. And
And they might like
it's
our stuff.
relatively mobile,
And they might like our stuff to start with.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
If we go ahead with tonight's recommendation, that we can't act on this tonight, we have to wait a month, that's April. And then when it goes to city council, will it go to city council in April or May?
You'll
And
probably
twice.
you'll probably get it in April, and then it'll be forwarded to them in May.
In May, and then that's a 2 months for an
It's
ordinance.
2 months because it's introduction and then it's
And so we're
adoption.
talking the end of summer practically.
So we're
before
talking
we would
June,
get back
yeah.
to studying the design guidelines,
Yeah.
and I'd like to be ready
Mhm.
sometime before it's actually enforced
Yeah.
for people to have this.
I think there's adequate time for review. It's just, but we want to keep it on the burner.
Okay.
So where do we go from here?
I think we'll go ahead. Let's see. We can't take action on the ordinance tonight. We know what we want to do. We want to have the references to the figures put in the ordinance that shoots it back to the policy, to the design guidelines. I think someplace we should, maybe within the month, set up a meeting to talk about the design guidelines. Make it with one assumption, that the ordinance is going to go through. Because we've had so many meetings and we have not had major opposition. So the ordinance is going to go through, so we know that we're going to need certain figures. And Roger's done most of them. So then we can say, okay, when a section comes up, see page or see section such and such of the design guidelines, we go to that page and say, okay, is it say what we want it to say? If it doesn't, we make that recommendation. I'm not saying go to revise the whole guidelines because they're tied into other things. But certain parts relating to signs have to be consistent with that ordinance, or we're going to cause confusion. And so that's how I would do it. Within the month, have even a special meeting if you want, just to talk about that, committee of the whole, and then then we could have, and that's a public meeting, but then we could have a agenda item for the public saying, look, the ordinance that you support required changes over here to support the ordinance. And these are recommended changes.
So it would be appropriate is to continue the public hearing until the April 18th. And then if you decide you wanted a special meeting to go over the design guidelines between now and then or shortly thereafter.
Would staff have the time to take a copy of the design guidelines and sketch in where we need to make changes?
Yes.
Okay. We can go over the recommended changes at a special meeting? And that way otherwise, because I don't know how long that might take, this way we know that we would keep the regular meeting short, to the point, and we have this as a committee meeting just to knock down, drag out on it.
Well, do we want to meet, we could meet March 20th or 27th. Those are both Thursdays. That would continue the pattern that we had.
Let's see.
Would that conflict with anybody who's using this space?
No?
Sorry, what was it?
27th.
At 9 in the morning, is that what we're doing?
Yeah?
It's regular, like for other special
Like we always
meetings,
do.
Yeah.
Okay.
March 20th at 9, does that work?
20th?
Yeah.
20th at 9, okay. And that would be a Thursday?
Yeah, the third Thursday.
That's good.
Yeah, with staff having done all this stuff for us, it shouldn't take too long to go through it, confirm it, and then when it gets put on the agenda, we got a package deal. Because once the council adopts it, the ordinance, we come back and make the changes to the. Wait a minute, does the council has to approve the guidelines, or the planning commission?
Planning Commission.
Okay, so that shouldn't take too long.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we need a motion to continue the public hearing.
Okay, motion to continue.
I move that we continue the sign ordinance to the next regular meeting on April 1st, 2014.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
I'll
Second.
that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Now, a motion for a special meeting on the 20th.
A motion that we meet to review and update where necessary and have a meeting on the 20th of March
At 9 o'clock.
at 9 o'clock in the morning
Okay.
as a public special meeting.
Okay, is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're good?
So that'll be posted.
Yeah, she'll have to do that. We'll take minutes and do the regular stuff. Okay, now we have a bunch of design discussion items. Actually, there were 6, 7 of them. First one being the ARCO appeal update. Staff, can you tell us what's happening out there?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission, just to let you know, I passed out the appeal that was filed by Dan DeFries on behalf of Frank Leal for the ARCO service station. The appeal is set for hearing, and you can see in our staff report that The ordinance says a 5-day notification, but our city attorney came back and said that we should do it at a 10-day, and so it resulted in a delay, and so we'll be having that appeal hearing March the 18th by the City Council. The appeal hearing specifies in the letter from Dan DeFries that all matters to be discussed. As a general rule of thumb, I like to have an appeal specify how the Planning Commission had erred, but in this case, he just said all-inclusive and to consider everything. One of the disadvantages that we had when we is we hadn't had too many appeals over the period of years since I've been around, and when he came in, we really didn't have a form. And if you pass those along, and Ernie brought those back today from Seaside, and we will be developing a form very similar to this, so that if we do have this in the future, that we can react. I think Dan, we informed him to just write us a letter, and he filed that as a letter rather than an appeal form.
The appeal process I think, is a very important part of the planning process. If you do have a commission that messed up, it should be corrected, or should be able to be corrected. But what bothered me about this whole thing was the way the appeal came in. And one of the things on this thing from Seaside, which I use many times, when an appeal has been filed, okay, an appeal should be submitted in writing within 7 calendar days of the date of the decision. The appeal shall state the pertinent facts and the basis for the appeal. That's real clear. It shouldn't be just a de novo hearing. They didn't get what they want, so we'll have a second full hearing, and maybe they win, maybe they don't. Because bottom line is, from the city council, you go to the courts, and that just takes an awful lot of time. But by having, my understanding of this thing is when you end up with the courts, the judge has to say, was this arbitrary and capricious? Was discrimination involved? Moral issues or whatever. And other than that, with California having home rule, local home rule, if your city council says this is it, that should be it. That is it. The judge says, unless you guys acted arbitrary and capricious, etc., this is going to hold. The courts are not going to override local issues and local control. So the Planning Commission went all the way, made this thing as open as possible, and got the best possible background for decision making. So we made an informed decision. Now, when you go to the City Council, anything new that comes in there, and they're going to present that to the council, that should come back to us. The thing is, if we had known these other things, we might have thought differently about it. It might have been a 3-2 instead of a 5-0. But there could have been a change. It could have been a difference. So anything new, as far as I'm concerned, should be coming back to the Planning Commission for review. Now, the council can approve, deny, or modify this thing. What we sent up. But if they get new stuff, let us see it. And the fact that they never showed up, in fact, in some of these appeal places, you can only talk about stuff that was presented. You can't come up with new stuff.
Well, the appeal was based on their need to study the mitigations, right?
Well, no.
That's what he said.
It just says
Is it appropriate for us to discuss this?
No.
this is because it's an agenda item.
I see, okay. And we're reviewing the Seaside.
I'm just using that as an
Procedure?
example of what we could be using. The fact that this already exists. Say, hey, if you didn't bring it up at the time, you can't wait and bring it up at an appeal hearing.
That's what I thought was.
But our code apparently is, I want to appeal.
I didn't understand that.
And even your appeal fees. I mean, you could have the appeal fees to the point where nobody could appeal, and thereby deny the rights of the people who were aggrieved by the decision. That's not right. This particular thing is, the use permit was a fee. 50% of that is the appeal fee. So they can get hefty. So as council will make a decision how much they want to charge, but there is staff time involved. Anyway, that's kind of the thoughts I had. I just wanted Roger to bring us up to date and then comment on what we could be doing to keep that from happening, because I've been in meetings for every single item. The chairman tells the applicant, and you have the right of appeal. The right of appeal exists within 10 days. They had to tell him that because of the ordinance. And we want them to have something to appeal on and about. So, no action on this one, but
Thank you for this.
Yes, we need that.
okay. Is there any other comment on that? No comment. Okay, a brewery building project at 104 the Alameda.
Yes. We just wanted to kind of bring you up to date. We had issued the foundation and building permit for the primary structure. We have not issued the landscaping plan, the lighting plan, site development plan, or the building permit for the second building. Only the brewery building is at issue with a building permit. They still have to submit their final landscaping plan, which we'll be bringing that back to you. I asked them for a lighting plan as well as the site grading, and they've submitted that to us. And then the owner has elected to proceed with the second building at the same time, and they'll be submitting that shortly. So we'll bring that back to you at this thing. The owner has terminated his service with the architect and has gone with a different firm. He's maintained some of the geotechnical and the civil engineering portions of it, but he's got a new landscaping architect and a new structural design engineer. It's going through the approval process, and we've supplied him with all of the Planning Commission guidelines, approvals, and the photos that we've approved so that the building will be intact. One of the issues that I came across with the previous architect was that the architect had drawn in galvanized gutters on the building with downspouts, and I didn't want those, and we got into a somewhat disagreement on it, but I think that we want to make sure that the building is replicated as close as we can to the building that we have as a photo. I've also asked Richard Ponce to assist me once the walls are up and the roof's on, and to go through on the exterior framing portion and the windows to make sure that he can assist us, because he was living there for a number of years, and he agreed he is going to help us.
Maybe they give you any static, tell them they have the right of appeal to the Planning Commission.
Yes.
So is the design plan the same?
Yes, the design plan is the same.
And the site, the situation on the plan is the same as is on the site now?
Yes.
Because I've had complaints about
Oh, no.
how many square feet, how many feet away from the sidewalk, how to...
Yeah,
all of
it
those
was
things
it
are
was
on the plan.
rotated parallel to there, so we could get it out in front of the restroom, and so it was rotated there, and then everything else is the same.
Is the material still stored that they plan to use
Yes.
for the features that we discussed?
Yes. And tomorrow they're bringing the windows in with samples to show me what the window framings, all the stylus of the panes are. I told them have to be wooden, so they're going to bring those in. They asked me about the glazing, whether we wanted it bronze or anodized, and I told them, I says, no, clear glass, because they did not have the anodized or bronze pane windows in that era, so we're going to make it clear glass.
I have been questioned about the architect. Is this landscape architect that they have hired, is it a registered architect?
Yes.
Because that's required for commercial work, and this is commercial work, isn't that right?
Yes, exactly. And we've supplied him, Matt sent him our tree list and shrub list, and he's thanked us, and he's gone through and changed a number of shrubberies and trees.
I've forgotten, is the buckeye tree across from Doña Esther going to stay or go?
It will stay. Mhm.
Because
It has
of
to
that.
be, it has to be trimmed up to meet the overhang distance. But we've saved that, and the planter strip will be around that on the parking stall.
And that whole intersection will work with the driveway there? And because right now, people back out of that driveway, there will be a circulation pattern that people can take.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, it'll be much better once you go in. Right now, people from Don Astor's are using it, and it's gravel and stuff, and there's no way to get out, so they have to back out and everything. When the thing is complete, there will be flow-through traffic from Franklin to the Alameda.
Okay. Any other comments on that one? For or against? Okay. I'm sorry.
I do need to say this on behalf of all the historical people who've called me.
Feel free.
Does the current architect have any experience with historical buildings that you know of, or that we could find out or
I
ask?
will find out, yeah.
Because that was one of the reasons that we listened carefully to the Weston Group, because they said they had
yeah.
previous experience with historical, and we know their work here in town, which they didn't carry out.
Do you want to invite them to a meeting, meet
The
them?
new people?
That's something you can do.
Let me approach them and see what they're, yeah.
Or we could have a site plan
The
visit.
safeguard is that we have all members of a commission as well as the staff to write herd on it and make sure that we follow the guidelines.
Maybe we could do a site visit sometime, the way we did in the beginning, and meet that person, because
They delivered the framing lumber for the walls, and they're going to be erecting the walls and getting it ready, and then they'll probably commence. I told them, I says, to get the roof system and the plywood on there, and then put the shingles on. I want to get that on so it's weather tight, and then the siding will be the last portion of it, in the windows. Inside is we're not putting any sheetrock. It's going to be bare walls until a tenant comes and decides who's going to move into it, and then they'll finish that off.
Makes
Another
sense.
question that I've been asked is, since some of the work is on a Sunday, I believe it was Sunday, I know it was Saturday, are there inspectors for the foundation on site with the pour and those kinds of things? Do we require them in
Yes.
San Juan, or is that not a procedure?
No, I've been on Saturday and Sunday, you know.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I can answer those people's questions. Thank you.
Yes.
Can he work on Sunday?
No, they
I thought that
generally
was a
don't work
condition.
on Sunday, but on Saturdays they do.
And they didn't, I might be confused.
No, I
about
think
what day
it was a condition that you didn't work on
Yes.
Sunday.
So, anyway, there was an inspector on site during the pours.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on brewery? Okay, the next one is Harvey's Lockup.
Just to let you know, Harvey's been very cooperative, and he's commenced on tapping into the 8-inch water main on 2nd Street, and he extended it to the building and put the riser and the PIV valve in there, and it's ready to move into the building and start his internal sprinkler system. So,
Good. Okay.
The red sign that says Harvey's Lockup, I really don't think that was what we had in mind. I thought we were going to put back potatoes, horses, or whatever the old sign said.
Well, and
What
beyond
did you
that,
remember?
that awning needs to be worked on, because it looks hazardous.
It's just, that red sign, I mean, how long am I going to be grieved about that? 4 or 5 years, maybe? Is it appropriate to ask him to take down the sign that says Harvey's Lockup? It was supposed to be a replica of the old sign saying potatoes,
Yeah.
Standard bread.
etc. And they supposedly kept the old sign it's supposedly somewhere in their office or in the building, and was not restored or
Well,
replicated.
according to your directions, Steve will be back in front of you, I think, let's see,
It's quarterly,
Quarterly, yeah, right. And so he'll probably be back in front of you at the April meeting.
Would it be appropriate as a neighbor to him for Vanda and I to ask him when we see him? We're there working in the museum some days, and ask him where the old sign is and how
That's
he might go
perfect.
about.
He might even want to donate it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, you have the right to talk to him. It's not a problem.
I'd like to see one thing done, because we got in all this trouble in this project. From now on, I'd like to see it when you pass something, it's done before they can move in. Because every other city's that way. And then we wouldn't be getting into these kind of troubles.
Especially when there's health and safety issues.
That's right. Because I'd like to see something done about that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
I'm glad he's doing what he's doing now, because
Yeah.
he's getting with it.
Was protecting himself too, because if
Yeah.
anything happens to that building, he's hurt
Liable.
with all the stuff invested he's got on it.
Or the previous owner, before they leave.
Interesting. Okay, any other comments on Harvey's Locker? General plan update, staff.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, just to give you an update on where the general plan is. We had our third community meeting, which was an success. We had doubled the amount of people in attendance. I think that was kind of due to our extensive outreach and getting notices and really pushing on trying to get more people from the community there in the evening. Setting up in front of the post office and putting in the mailer inside the water bill, I think had worked out for us. And so to update you, the next meeting coming up, the fourth community meeting, is going to be held on March 12th. And it'll be at 6 p.m. at the community center. And at that meeting, Cal Poly will be presenting the draft general plan, which will be basically the culmination of all the input that we've received throughout the process. And from the last meeting, kind of going all over the alternative growth scenarios and what we heard during that meeting, picking and pulling all those positives and putting them together, and that would be the draft general plan. So encourage people to attend next week, and of course there'll be food provided, and from that point we'll have a draft general plan, and we'll have it for your review. I guess it would be the April meeting of the Planning Commission will have it for you to review and comment.
Anthony Batella, who is our supervisor, doesn't remember getting one of those cards in the mail. Maybe he lives in the valley, so that might be one of the reasons he didn't get it.
Yeah, I think we've just been, the cards I think have been going out to mainly just the businesses.
Oh.
And then, the push that we had, putting the mailers in the water bill, went out to anyone that has water service.
But there are
in the
people
area.
around San Juan who are vitally interested, so, and probably didn't pick it up in some other media, but, so next, we will be having other events related to this, reviewing it
Yeah, over
later.
the next few months, we'll be reviewing the draft.
So let's-
As far as getting out notices, I send out emails to all the agencies in the area and people that would be interested, people that have identified their interests, as well as we public notice everything. So the word's out there, and as far as if Anthony's interested in
I'd like to interject here. Would you make a point of putting him on the
Yes.
mailing list, email mailing list?
Definitely.
He may not be in the city, but he's an influential person, and we need all the support we can get sometimes. And I think we want him. We want to know what he's doing. I think by the same token, he should want to know what his constituents are doing. And here's a place where he can know, because he could send somebody down there to represent him to say, what's happening. And I think that would be a good thing on his part.
I was able to tell him how enthusiastic the community is, and he was surprised because he's seen other general plans going, and without the same kind of enthusiasm this one has generated.
See, see right there. You recognize who the leaders are. San Juan
And if there's anyone else that you can think of that would be good to to add to distribution, I mean, definitely let me know. I mean, I tried to kind of copy the Planning Commission on emails that I've sent out to the General Plan Advisory Committee just to get a sense of what it is that they're receiving and having those flyers for your own personal, hey, you can print them out or also forward them to anyone that you feel would be interested in both English and Spanish.
I would send him a card if there's
Oh yeah,
time,
we can do that.
in addition to the email at this
I
time.
I warned him that we expected him. the next
No,
meeting if he
I
could
can
get
call
there.
him too.
No, see, I
don't
was
have a
just
cell
told
phone.
him I could,
Complete oversight.
no, but the fact that you invited him, hey, quick staff, send him a card.
Well, during this past month, too, social media has become a lot more involved. There's a Facebook page for San Juan Bautista Neighborhood Watch, which surprisingly doesn't really cover that much, but I've posted information about meetings and where information can be found, and Connie's, put flyers into.
So that neighborhood watch, Jolene had kind of picked up on that because she's been heading the San Juan Bautista neighborhood watch, and they're not the same.
No,
And
which
so
they could use that logo.
She's researching to see if maybe they would possibly change the name to maybe Happenings in San Juan
Yeah,
or
it's
something
kind
or
of
other, but it's kind of a little bit misleading that group is not the same. And I mean, I guess with Facebook, I mean, you can
You can
kind
do
of
whatever you
create
want,
whatever
yeah.
you want to do, and so that's something she's researching to figure out about.
Good, yeah.
Which I think if there's an opportunity, there's I think 400 plus people in that group, and if they all live in San Juan and they talk about, hey, there was a some kind of incident here or there, and those things get notified, then I mean maybe there's a valid group to pull in.
Aside from Anthony Botello, what about the county seat? Is anything, I mean, all these changes that we do in San Juan Bautista, does the county seat get some kind of information from us so that the supervisors know that this is what's going on in San Juan? I mean, or do we just link to Anthony Botello?
Well,
Link to all of them.
Well, we keep the San Benito County Planning Department appraised of all of our actions and dialogue, and it's up to the planning director and the staff to keep their elected officials,
Linked with us.
linked with us, yeah.
And what steps do we take to make sure that there is a link there? That they are linking with us and we are linking with them.
Well, we have one of the members of the General Plan Advisory Committee is an
planning
associate
staff
planner at the county, and so we have that direct link, and he's been really good resource to have at all the meetings. He's been present, as well as giving really good feedback on things that the background reports and other things. So that's kind of our direct link.
Because I know in the past, it's, we need some heads up to make sure that that everybody's on top of things, that we know what's coming down the pipeline on the county side versus the city side.
Right. And I think that's what we were trying to do at the beginning, was kind of get that group of
Right.
stakeholders.
And I think it's more important, not so much at the legislative level, but at the second, third, and fourth tier down, where the applications are made. That's where we have to have the collaboration to make sure that permits are not issued right in our sphere of influence.
Right.
And that's where Matt and I have been trying to develop that rapport with the county planning department, so we're kept appraised of their activities.
Okay.
Okay, that's the general plan update, so on the 12th,
Yes.
next meeting. Okay, the next one is the CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Application Public Hearing. Yeah.
Okay, so as Roger had identified earlier in the meeting, that application is due by April 11th. And so we've been working really hard to kind of schedule out the next days ahead of us to kind of meet all those requirements that are required by the grant. Some of the items, having the Cycle 4 housing element adopted by the city, which we're on task with doing that. going through our ordinance and looking at the growth management ordinance and make sure it doesn't interfere with our eligibility. Citizen participation, which we'll be having the first public hearing, and that'll be Thursday evening in this room at 6 p.m. And so we put out notices for that to get people here in both English and Spanish. And we also need a resolution from the city's governing body as part of the application. And so some of the positives that San Juan Bautista has going for it: one, we have not applied for the CDBG for quite a while. The 50% rule, which just basically doesn't apply to us because we don't have 50% of a grant that we haven't gotten. In the 2000 census, it identifies San Juan Bautista as 53.7% low to moderate income, and so that puts us over the threshold for pretty much projects in the city, which that's really that's good for the application. Potable water projects are high on the list, and I know in San Juan Bautista there's need for that. So the first step, we were getting out the word that we were going for funding, and so having this public notice for the design phase meeting coming up this Thursday, we have to kind of go through kind of a list of things as well. One, the amount of funds that are available, and kind of going through and explaining the kinds of activities that are available. So we'll have to go through and explain the programs, invite attendees to ask questions and give us suggestions of what kind of possible projects they would like to see. Discussion of the national objectives. Again, the amount of funding that's available. And then basically 30 days of time, or 30 days will go by, and then we'll have our next meeting, which would be basically the projects that we have identified and that we're going to be going for. And that meeting will be held on April 7th. And again, it'll be in this room at 6 p.m. And there we would talk about the dollar amounts, the activities that we've proposed, and then if there's any relocation of residents, then we would have to have a plan for that. And so, kind of going through, basically after that second meeting, we'd have the application to get turned in and things like that. And so coming up on Thursday, we'll be identifying what projects we would like to go for, but I'd also like to take this time to see what the commission has in mind for projects, if any.
Do we have any idea how much money would be available?
Yes, I had some printouts just to kind of hand out because they weren't included in the packet, but they're in the other room. So if I can squeeze away, I can go grab them.
What Matt was saying is the next meeting we want to get from the community what projects that we feel would qualify, in the eligible projects, and we're going to ask the commission at the same time, if you feel that there are some projects that have merits, Mm-hmm.
That was fast.
Yeah,
Super fast.
I got this.
Thank you.
Someone just before
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
So in front of you, you have a chart. So it kind of identifies all the activities, different categories, housing to public improvement activities, and it kind of breaks down the amounts and the number of projects. So in total, you can have a number of 3 projects total, and then in total, the amount that you can go for is $2 million. And so trying to figure out, which projects are needed, number one, and then in what amounts, and then, kind of getting that public input, what other projects might be good to identify if, someone would like to rehab a residential structure of some sort, what is that structure and do they meet the qualifications? And so that's what we're going to be figuring out on Thursday, and if there's anything to be identified this evening, we would include that in our process.
Where is the city in terms of the water pelleting?
We are in the final design. We're meeting with the Water District to collaborate with them to see if they were willing to help us. And so that's
Might that be a project that...
Yeah,
that,
so
that would be an eligible project.
Yeah, one of the things that they look for is for projects that are shovel-ready. They basically are needing funding, and then if they kind of meet all those requirements, the low income and special need groups and different things like that, then those are projects that they fund, and so that's kind of something to keep in mind. I mean, I went to a workshop about a month and a half ago, and I was sitting there for 8 hours learning about this program, and I know I just scratched the surface. And so, yeah, there's kind of a lot. I was looking through online, and they have a whole web page with all these links about all these different things, and you get into one and you go off into Wonderland, and so there's quite a lot of information, and more than I can explain this evening, but that if there is anything that you can think of and we can see if it is something that could work, then
Well, we touched on this earlier, and we've talked about it for years, but wayfinding, the monument signage would be great. And this isn't, well, the acoustics in the community center are terrible, and that might be, since we're using the community center more, it'd be great
And that's the public facilities activity in that first block up on the right hand, acquisition, new construction, or rehabilitation of building grounds for public purposes, see? And that would be a good feature. Funding and operations costs, including labor, supplies, and materials for public service activities. The eligible activities, CBD activities, generally approved activities included those which address the needs for potable water supplies, sewage systems, and sales of sanitary. So there's a wide variety in the community development block grant activities.
On my morning walks after the rains recently, I said to one of the girls, someday if the city ever wins the lottery, we should get sewers. Because we don't have them, do we? The streets, like 3rd Street?
Have drainage?
Storm drains? Storm drains.
Storm drain.
For 3rd Street?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a storm drain collection system, but it's not citywide in the sense, and there's still a lot of areas that are underserved in terms of good drainage. But the core of it is basically down 4th Street and in and out to by the sewer treatment plant, and then
that covers 3rd Street.
Yeah, and then south of town is that's probably the most pressing need, because the water coming out of that San Juan Canyon and the 2 different canyons can inundate, and that's where most of the flooding occurs on the Alameda, as well as over there by the Mission RV Park.
Can the other funding go along with this funding in order to complete a project, or do they just stay separate, not the whole project themselves?
No, there's nothing to prohibit a community development block grant from partnering with other funds that are available from the city. Yes.
Or the community foundation or other sources that we might explore in order to complete the project?
Yep.
And what about our parks?
I think
Is there something we can do
Maybe
with
public facilities.
That would be under public facility activities.
Because it's buildings/grounds.
Right. How about new parks?
So I think, some of these more specialized area projects, so let's say you have a smaller park that's going to be servicing the community just around it. And I mean, it would be good for the overall community, but that it's kind of focused in on one area, so you have to look at who's benefiting from the project. And so, depending on what project you're doing, you have to look at who you're benefiting, and if
you're going to get somebody that's going to be grading them and establishing points to, because you're going to be competing with other jurisdictions. The more people you can provide benefit and service to, the better are you going to score on points. So if you have a park and it's just in one region, you're limiting yourself to that thing. A regional park would be more appropriate. See?
Yeah,
So,
and then in the case too where that you'd have to do an income survey on that certain section that you would identify that's going to be the benefiting group, and if that section was a higher income, then you wouldn't qualify, but if it was lower, then you could, and so it kind of adds another element to.
That's why we felt that San Juan, in our analysis of the population here, citywide, where we can score a lot of points because we have that great separation of income levels and people that are retired and stuff. And the more we can serve that need, the better off we are citywide.
Are we hopeful that we will have a good attendance?
We'll see. I mean, we put out the noticing. That's why I wanted to include it in the packet and get it on community TV and put it on Benito Link. And I mean, we push. I mean, we do what we can in the limited amount of time, I guess. I mean, we made all the necessary requirements to notice, which is key to check it off the list, but then also just getting the information out there is important as well.
For years and years, I didn't understand this, the name of it.
Yep.
Community Development Block Grants. It's not just for one block.
Right.
It's a block of money, right? Is that right?
I'm
block
not
of
sure.
funding?
I think it
doesn't apply to one block of space in
I
San
think
Juan
the block
Bautista.
is a census term, and so if you look at the census and you can kind of go down to the block and the tract, and it's kind of
I see.
I think that's where it comes from,
Is
but
that-
I could be wrong. I could look it up
But
on
we need to let people know
Wikipedia.
it's not just
For the
by the block.
The other thing that we'll be doing is we'll be in the water bill. There's kind of a small section for typing in just a few, 30-something characters. So that's another way that we're going to be reaching out, and that'll be going into the bills that are printed. I think tomorrow.
Both in Spanish
this
and
week.
English.
Great.
And that'll be in April, for April.
So those
'Cause
bills
we're
will be
gonna miss
going out
this one.
when exactly?
Tomorrow,
Usually by the 7th.
7th, yeah.
So that's, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any comments on CDBG? Okay, we'll let that one go, and then we'll go back to inclusionary housing. Staff. This is staff night.
Yeah.
Well, just as a follow-up to what our discussion at the last meeting, we've kind of looked at San Juan, Hollister, and San Benito County, and you can see in the staff report the variations. Each one of them has allowable incentives from secondary units to duet lots, to bonus densities and incentives, and then graduated bonuses and incentives in San Benito County. We're still reviewing our options, and one of the ideas that Matt and I came across was that our current inclusionary housing says 6 lot developments or greater, but it really doesn't cover individual homes or small little minor subdivisions, and we felt that maybe we should take and address that to see if everybody should pay their fair share. We've issued some building permits that last month, and yet there's no inclusionary fees that we collect on small individual lots or minor subdivisions of 4 lots or less. We're looking at that, and everything we've acquired the inclusionary materials from Watsonville and Monterey County, as well as San Benito County and Hollister, and we're trying to meld them together, and then we'll come back with a recommendation.
I've got one question. I've never used the term. What is a duet lot?
A duet is a lot that generally is on the corner lot where you can design it to where it has two frontages, and if you stand on any one frontage, it looks like a single-family house. But it's really a
2 units.
duplex, but it's 2
Yeah,
units.
yeah.
And we call them duets because if you stand on the frontage there, hey, it looks like a
Okay.
single-family house.
Yeah.
And then you go over to the other side, hey, it looks like a single family, but they're connected.
Yeah.
I like that.
It allows the duplex to be in a single family, area without
Area.
it really being
It's
identified
a
as,
zero
oh,
lot
this is
line.
a duplex. Yeah.
If
Zero
you
lot line.
if you categorize it as a duplex lot, then you have to have that special zoning, and then a duplex lot is generally bigger than this thing, and then it's classified as an apartment, where the duet is really classified as a single family.
Attached singles. Okay.
And inclusionary means, or
The term inclusionary means is that we would try to include everybody into affordable housing category. So we want to include the housing development to be inclusive to promote affordable housing.
I needed to hear that on television tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments on that or questions? Next is plan lines. Staff.
Again, at the last meeting, I brought forth about 10 plan lines that I felt are to look to the future for circulation, right-of-ways for parks, linear parks, streams and stuff like that, and pedestrian right-of-ways. We've identified 2 that we want to really accelerate because I think that they're going to be needed in the foreseeable future. And there's one is the Lang Street easterly extension that goes over to the Alameda and the San Juan Canyon Road. And we feel is that sooner or later the Johnson property, about 5 acres, will come to fruition and start to develop. And the only outlet is going to be Lang Street proper and Old Lang Street. And by funneling them down Old Lang Street, it's a narrow road, it's close to the intersection 156, and it's not the most appropriate to have exiting traffic coming out of there. It would present some traffic problems and stuff. We feel is that the plan line that I've identified on there would not only bring it into a good intersection where we future-wise we could have a roundabout, as well as it would make access to the Nyland property, which is owned now by the Isha Foundation, that they could develop at the lower end and stay off of the next subject that you're going to be reviewing is the hillside ordinance, because we don't want to encourage development on the hillside. So it serves 2 purposes. It encourages an alternate outlet. Right now, the only outlet of all the homes on Lang Street have to come under the underpass of the 156. And for some reason, if we had a large earthquake and that thing collapsed, there would be no way that we could get to the residents on Lang Street. They would be blocked unless they had to go through the Johnson property and then come into the subdivision. And that if you've seen the end of Lang Street and the Johnson property, there's a grade separation of about 3 feet, so it would be very difficult to get a fire engine up into there. So, so I'm concerned about it in the long run.
Is the Johnson property the one right by the highway that's currently for sale?
Yes, yes. And that was the same piece that a real estate person came in and asked for a
Larger,
variance
higher
of
sign.
of the sign. Yeah, it was there. Now, the information that I received is that the Johnson property made a proposal for the Planning Commission several years ago, and it came where they were going to connect New Lang to Old Lang, and it was denied by the Planning Commission. That's what I heard. I don't know, I haven't found it.
So this extension would be for vehicles?
Vehicles, yes.
And-
It's a plan line for vehicles.
And is it on public easement, or?
Well, once you do a plan line, then you hold your public hearings, then you prepare these legal maps, and then you go record them. And then any development has to conform to those plan lines. It's a planning mechanism that's available in the Subdivision Map Act as well as the municipal codes.
Nobody can build inside of those lines once
Okay.
they've been adopted.
Build or use?
Nobody can build upon
Build
that.
upon them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
once they're
There-
recorded.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we need to do that.
So you
ASAP.
you reserve those lands so that you can ultimately, when development takes place, put streets and roads in them.
Okay.
Now, the second property is that you're well aware is that the state of California is going to be widening 156 from Union Road to San Juan. And what we found in the design is that they'll be putting a new 4 lanes on the south side of 156. The old road will be turned into a frontage road and a bicycle pathway and a pedestrian pathway. Okay? When you get to Breen Road, and then the Cagney Road and Breen Road, it goes there. And if the bicycles are coming and heading west on that pathway, then they have to come to Cagney Road. They have to cross 156 and get on the Mission Vineyard Road and San Juan Hollister Road and come into the city. There would be no way that they can get into the city. We looked at it from the standpoint is that we should throw a plan line along from Breen Road all the way along the freeway, 156, excuse me, not a freeway, and to the eastern terminus of Nyland Road. Then once that is preserved and we get the money to improve it, we can make a connection between Cagney and Breen Road and Nyland where people can bicycle and pathway to come into the city without crossing 156.
And as well as bicycle, can they drive cars?
No cars.
You
It would
would not have a
it would be a pedestrian bicycle pathway.
That's good.
Yep.
Where are they?
And so those were the 2 projects that I felt that we really should be acting on very quickly
For plan lines.
for plan lines, yeah.
And so that being said, what's the next step on?
Well, the next step is if I have your guidance and stuff like that, we will start developing the necessary tools, and then, and obviously when we do the maps, then we have to send out the notices to everybody and the property owners, and then we'll hold the public hearings.
Sounds good.
And if there's any other projects that you want us to delve into, I've identified in last month's 10 plan lines that were very functional to start meeting our future needs, you know, in circulation and easements of right-of-ways for, you know.
So this is actually just reserving the right to use those eventually when and if we annex those areas.
Exactly.
And people want to develop there.
If they want to develop at any time, they're going to have to use
They're
that
gonna
as a
have to
basic
comply
road
with the
through their
lines,
property.
yeah.
This is really good planning, isn't it?
It is planning.
It's
Very
it's
good.
Looking
Advanced
forward.
planning.
Yeah.
it's advanced proactive planning
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
If you get the approval.
If you get the approval. And so many times planning commissioners are reactionary, and we
Yes.
were reacting to projects come there.
Yeah.
And here
It's
we're
nice to
taking a thing where we
proactive.
should be a little bit proactive and looking at the advanced needs. And that goes back to the next item that we have.
The next
These-
item,
Why just would
So,
like to...
so we're not going
Put it in
to
there.
make any, on those last, what are we going to do with all these items tonight? Just discuss them and that's it?
discuss them, but the staff has direction now that he knows that the commission will look favorably upon a proposal for a plan line.
Okay.
Along the lines we saw.
So we are in favor of that?
Yes.
Well, let's find out. I'll call for a motion to ask staff to pursue the plan line for the joining the land
You
streets.
can't take any action on this. All you can do is just got to give us direction.
Okay,
That's
there's
what
a consensus. I didn't hear anybody really oppose it.
oh, so you're saying the consensus is to pursue this because there hasn't been any negative feedback on our part?
Yeah, Matt had some more comments.
Well, I was just going to say that kind of identified thus far in the general plan update, having that better connectivity for both pedestrians and bicyclists. I mean, it's high priority, and it's something that will probably be seen, identified from the community. These items that we're bringing forward, and so, I mean, these are things that we've heard and things that we see that are a need, and so it just kind of gives more backing to take these approaches and follow up with these plan lines.
And I think it's the overall intent is to really make San Juan a little bit more pedestrian, bicycle friendly, and promote that. And
So the plan line that goes through the Johnston property would include bike lanes as well. Is there a defined width when you're making the...
well, we laid it out as a 60-foot plan line width.
So that would include,
That's a standard street.
That would include bike lanes and so forth, because that's the way the bikes would go up to the canyon and Fremont Peak, and
Well,
which they do.
that's a bigger plan line than we've been working on, and that is the road between the Alameda and the Upper Mission Vineyard Road at the threshold of the San Juan Canyon. We want a plan line for that to where it will be wide enough for a pedestrian bicycle in that section there, and that covers the Ottoboni property as well as the Ish property on both sides.
So you're proposing, you're going to come down through the Johnson property, cut across through Nyland's property, then you're going to come out between Rainier's house and that little house on the corner.
Yes.
We'll be able to talk more in detail about it when we get calls for a public hearing, but at this point, I think staff knows that we're not objecting to them pursuing that. Okay, the next one is hillside ordinance. It was brought to our attention about a meeting or two ago, and the staff has a report on that.
So just to give you a sense, Roger and I were doing some research to basically look to create an ordinance that would provide guidance for development that would maintain existing rural character, conserve landforms and natural landscape, preserve wildlife habitats, protect, preserve view sheds, ensure that developments are designed to fit with the characteristics and constraints of the site, and protect life and property from sites that are constrained by slope stability, landslide hazard, fire hazard, and fault zones. So kind of overall picture is the areas, if you look on the map, that's at the very end of the packet.
At the very end of the packet, Matt prepared a thing there, and on the back side of that map, the first map, it shows the lands that are inside the city now that would be subject to any type of slope density, hillside restrictions. Okay? But the flip side of that is a map that we prepared in our sphere of influence that affects steep slopes that are over 15%. And you can see our concern is right outside our city limits, and our ultimate sphere of influence where we could be annexing is that the control of development on hillsides is at the mercy of San Benito County. And we wanted to put in place some guidelines that at least gives you, the community, the ability to not control, but I'm going to say put the input on development that's going to take place around there. And that's important because you can see that's a heck of a difference from what's existing and what potentially could take place.
And some of the slope, because it's less than 15%, but it's still slope, is in this green area on this big map, isn't it?
That is correct,
This
yes.
seems like slope when you're there looking at it, this area right here off of Salinas Grade Road. It seems like slope when you're sitting in a car looking up at it. So it's still
Well,
slopey.
I think the areas that are defined are basically the steeper slopes, but also the view sheds. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not identifying. You can see the contour lines throughout the map. I mean, basically, we're looking at preserving that rural character that San Juan Bautista has by, just taking a walk outside the door and looking around. And so those are more so the elevation high enough that it's in the view shed, and also those areas that are steeper slopes. And so those are more or less what's identified in orange. And then also in red are basically those ridge lines that are also visible from throughout city limits.
The question I have is, when we look at the ridge in San Juan Bautista, could you locate for us what we're looking at on this map? The houses on the top, are they in the city?
No.
So when we see this arrow here, they're
besides
more
the,
to the west, north to the west.
So they're outside of the city
Their
limits?
county,
Yeah,
and then
they're,
the water tank, our water tank, is it in the city or the county?
It's in the county. The water tank is not in the city, yeah.
you can, if you go to the map that doesn't have the red on it, it just shows the highlighted areas in orange. You can see there's a little white dot.
Oh,
That's
okay.
that would be our water tank. And then also you can see Washington Street, and I mean really you can start to see the vegetation and the homes there on the ridge. Basically, they're kind of lighter on the imaging because there's so many layers, but that basically they're on that ridge.
Okay, right here.
Yep, can you see them?
Yeah. And the water tank that I see that belongs to the Isha Institute right now, it's showing above the ridge line?
That would be basically, yeah. Yeah, it would be on the ridge line towards.
That's our water tank. The other one is way down here, right up here.
Yeah.
Looking from my porch.
Would be kind of in this direction
Is it?
on that side.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's
And
not
then the well is the white dot you saw it.
over here. This one,
Must
is
be
that
down
ours?
there.
My own house.
And did the, and
in the city?
is that water tank full of water right now?
That is
Got
Theirs?
5,000, we got 5,000 gallons.
That's the water tank?
the ridge
They
here,
got water in
that
their
tank
They
is
haul it in.
about right in here.
Okay.
And our
Yeah.
reservoirs
And they're
here,
planting all
and
them,
that is
trees.
right here.
But I think the county has an ordinance that you can't build on the ridge anymore.
Well, I thought they had it before they put the houses there.
No, that's come in
didn't?
afterwards, yeah.
See, planning is always ends up being reactive.
Yeah.
No, we,
Yeah.
And this is part of the problem. So
Yeah, the
plan
last-
lines and hillside ordinances, I mean, granted, public health and safety is involved here because you don't want this hillside washing away. But aesthetics, I think, is a major element of our community here.
the examples in our binder this time talk a lot about grading, retaining walls, height that they have to be, vegetation. I thought the examples you gave us were very informative.
Yep, so that was kind of what we were looking for, was just kind of getting a mix of what was out there. And I was able to find an attachment 1, which is a view shed analysis and report kind of up from the Bay Area. And there you can see a lot of the cities that are within Santa Clara County and the cities that are outside that kind of summarize very nicely just some of the highlights from those different communities and what they've done, just as food for thought. And also, in the staff report itself, we pulled some of the things just to be consistent with the county language, just because if a lot of the area that is going to be ridgeline and slope is in the county, And in our sphere of influence, we kind of want to jive with what they have in place, but also, expand in what we feel is necessary. And so, so that's kind of what was included in the staff report. And again,
Is there any mechanism that the county and the city can use so that San Juan Bautista would become the lead agency in determining what happens in this space that's not in our city?
well, I think it just comes down to our sphere of influence is kind of just it's kind of a friendly agreement between the county. I think, really communicating with the county during our general plan update has been strengthening those relationships, and as well as us kind of letting them know if we hear things that are going on, in our sphere, we kind of contact them and say, hey, hey, you guys know what's going on with this, and so we kind of have this dialogue.
It's working for us?
Right, having the...
So it's working now.
Because we have two professionals with us.
The other avenue is to get into an aggressive annexation, control the lands that you think are sensitive.
Okay. Thank you much. Next, we have comments from commissioners. Commissioners. Go down.
I've talked to them, haven't I?
I would like to thank staff for being so proactive.
Good job.
It's really good planning, and I know you guys have been working really hard. We appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
I was just going to say that, Vonda. But that's okay. I just want to say that as far as all the discussion items, with all due respect to the appeal on the ARCO appeal, I would say with the brewery, what's happening with the brewery, what's happening with Harvey's lockup, the general plan update, and the block grants, the inclusionary housing, the plan lines. With one more question, does the proposed Lang Street, the new one, is that going to be within the city limits? All of it?
Part of it in the city and part of it's in the county right now.
Okay. But also the hillside ordinance, I just want to say that the staff has done a super job, the planning commission. I mean, I'm really proud of what they've been doing, and the public, it's just been outstanding. Thank you.
Ditto. I second your thoughts there. Okay, I'd like to make two. One of the things that we have had to do, policy we started was to recognize historical preservation. May is Historical Preservation Month, and last few years we have had somebody who has done some major restoration or work on historical buildings, and recognize them for the work that they did, because it enhances downtown, makes people want to come into the city, and it's all it all fits with the policies we have. And so we didn't have this on the agenda, but I'd like to appoint two members to a committee to come up with some recommendations for who we should recognize, and have that brought up to the next meeting. And that being chairman of that historic board, he'd be the logical person to go.
I'd like to do it.
And
I'll do it.
you would work with it? Okay. So Vanda and Georgiana would be on the, what do you want to call it?
Preservation Month recognition.
Preservation Month recognition.
Past recipients,
Ponzini's and the Pauls.
Yeah, so we got two to start with. So I just wanted to, speaking of the commission, I wanted to keep this going and not lose it, because we started something, and I think if we don't maintain consistency, people are going to say, you talked big today, but what did you do tomorrow? So let's keep it that way. And then as a personal one for me, the San Juan Mission is going to have a blood drive on the 9th. That's Sunday. And so all you folks who have a spare pint of blood, or have somebody you know with a spare pint of blood, you bring them over to Casa Maria between 9 and 1. The folks would be glad to take your blood. And also working with Baskin Robbins, a pint for a pint, you get a chit for a pint of ice cream if you pop a pint of blood. So that was my two comments. Okay, any other comments, staff? None? None? Good. Okay, adjournment. Is there a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn the meeting of the Planning Commission.
I'll second it.
Second, favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. And what time did we give them for this? 7:50.